Hi everyone, it's Surah. I'd like to share with you a recent project I completed. It's called Synchronicity and the Hero's Journey. It integrates the work of Carl Jung's Synchronicity together with Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey and Follow Your Bliss. My girlfriend Carla, she coined the term synchroplicity. I love these two words together because when you follow your bliss, you start to notice more synchronicity happen in your life. And Carl Jung really focused on this at the end of his life and career. He used synchronicity not only as a way to help his patients heal, but he also noticed that when you really looked at synchronicity, it could contain vital clues to your own life path and purpose, and eventually help you realize your own potential. He believed that synchronicity was a way to shift a person from an ego-centric point of view to a whole consciousness point of view. I believe that synchronicity is going to become more and more common. Joseph Campbell, he said that when you follow your bliss, you start to notice doors open for you that would not have been there for anyone else. And I think here he was alluding to the power of synchronicity, the power of following what it is that you really love, and really heeding your own inner call. These days, I think more people have the courage to stray from the main path. And more people are interested in life purpose. They're interested in living an authentic and a meaningful life. And this is really taking people on the hero's journey. I think this is a very important time right now, especially those of you who are very dedicated to your own spiritual growth and path. They find themselves right now going through severe tests and challenges, and this is the hero's journey. When you follow your bliss, you embark on the hero's journey, and following your bliss isn't always bliss, because eventually you have to face your fears. You have to eradicate your fears as part of that journey. And the farther you are along on that journey, the more severe your tests and challenges become. You're going to get hit at that Achilles heel, because the hero's journey, it's a universal story. It's a universal story of transformation and spiritual enlightenment. So in a sense, if you are willing to embark on this journey of going inward, of living from your deepest truth, you must be willing to face your own death. And really, that's the death of your own ego, because ego and bliss can't really stay in the same state together. The more that you are following what's true for you, the more you're going to have to deal with the limitations of the ego. And many people go through the dark night of the soul, where they're facing their inner darkness, where they're having to face their greatest fears, their temptations, and it can be a very treacherous path, and that's why Joseph Campbell really laid out the steps of the hero's journey. I think many people are going through these various transitions, big life transitions in their own life, and Carl Jung said that when we are going through these transitions, what you'll start to notice is synchronicity, and it's when we're in that place of major change. This could be death, this could be disease, it could be disaster, anything that has really been taken out from under you. He even talked about the power of hitting rock bottom, and that these are very potent times for synchronicity to occur. And often during those times we feel raw, we feel vulnerable, we feel uncertain, we're not sure. So that's when we start to consciously begin to look around and see what might be our next steps, what can we do. And people will turn to prayer during these times. And I'd like to share with you a story about Martin Luther King and his major life transition as he rose to leadership during the Civil Rights Movement. It's a powerful story. Not many people know about this story, and I'd like to share this with you. I'm going to just refer to my notes here. In December of 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give her seat up for a white person, it initiated the entire Montgomery bus boycott. And that's when Martin Luther King, he was only 26 years old at that time. He was a pastor, he was a new father, and he was nominated to essentially lead the movement. And he said that it happened so quickly that I did not have time to think it through. It is probable that if I had, I would have declined the nomination. And interestingly enough, what followed after the Montgomery bus boycott was initiated was complete chaos and disaster and division. And there was division amongst the Black community. There was uprisings within the Black community. King was thrown in jail for a minor traffic violation. People began to question his role in the movement. And he also received numerous death threats every day, about 30 to 40 death threats a day. And it was during this time that King really became aware of his own frailty and limitations. He said, "I almost broke down under the continual battering." And on January 27th, 1956, almost 2 months later, King hit an absolute rock bottom. And that's when he received a particularly threatening death threat. And he said, "Nigger, we're tired of your mess, and if you aren't out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow up your house and blow your brains out." And this is the time that Martin Luther King said that he hit a saturation point. Remember, he had his wife Coretta at home, his new daughter Yolanda, who was only 10 weeks old. And he went into his kitchen at about midnight that night, and he sat in front of an untouched cup of coffee. And he began to pray. He began to think about how he could bow out of leading the civil rights movement without looking like a coward. And he wanted to find a way to get out. So he started to pray out loud. He said, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right, but I must confess, I'm losing my courage." He said that in that moment, he experienced the presence of the divine as he had never experienced him before. He said, "I could hear an inner voice saying to me, 'Martin Luther, stand up for truth. Stand up for justice. Stand up for righteousness.'" And it was in that very moment, that pivotal moment, that he knew he was going to lead the civil rights movement, because he knew that God had his back. He knew that no matter what, this movement was going to happen, and that it was beyond any one single person. Martin Luther King even said that had he never been born, this movement would have taken place, and that he just happened to be there. 3 days later, his house was bombed. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but the entire experience that King went through really deepened his own spiritual faith and understanding. It strengthened him internally, and he became the leader of the civil rights movement in that moment. And this is a really telling story, because Carl Jung said that when we hit rock bottom, what happens is that a major archetype will constellate in someone's consciousness. So it's almost as if a part of you is being activated during these major life changes. They're like initiations. So for the case of Martin Luther King, he was initiated to be the archetype of, you could say, the messianic savior of someone who just led thousands of people through the civil rights movement. And you might notice in your own life, an archetype is basically a role. It's a prototype. So a teacher is an archetype, a bully is an archetype, a victim, and we all play these different roles. We can be a mother, we can be a son, we can be, a leader. We play many roles in our life, and oftentimes when we're going through these major transitions, we're being asked, there's a part of us that's being asked to step it up on some new level. There might be new patterns of these archetypes that we need to embrace. For example, we might have to become more assertive. We might have to be a little more soft. more masculine, more feminine. And when you go through these major life changes, you might start to notice different synchronicities. And Carl Jung said that when you look at the synchronicities, you will start to notice a theme that's being highlighted or an archetype. So for example, if you're going through your life, you might notice that you keep running into certain types of people. Maybe they're people in the computer science industry all of a sudden, or people in the wellness industry. And to notice that, to really pay attention to that and see if that's something that you are feeling genuinely called to. So this is one way of being able to use synchronicity as cues to your own life path. One of the pieces that I share as part of this offering is the feminine way of going about the hero's journey, because oftentimes we think of the hero as somebody who is fierce and brave and courageous. He's got a sword in his hand and he's slaying the dragon and he's facing, his biggest fear. And towards the end of the journey, it becomes a more feminine process. It's a process of surrendering, letting go of any control, letting go into the unknown, letting go, surrendering to who you really are, and giving yourself permission to follow what it is that's just deeply true for you and only you, because it is your bliss. You can only know what that is for yourself. So this is a guide. This offering is a guide to kind of help you connect the dots to see how all of these things relate together. If you're someone who feels like you have strayed off the main path, that you're undergoing your own hero's journey, if you're somebody that's noticed synchronicity, this program might help you tie these things together and really propel you towards your own next steps.